this is James here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting February the 18th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me for this week's video reading. I'd also like to take a moment to welcome those of you, officially, who have recently subscribed to the channel. Over the course of the last couple of weeks, I've had an uptick in the number of subscribers. So if you recently subscribed to the channel, please allow me to take this moment out to officially welcome you and saying thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. I do appreciate the support and the encouragement that you give both me and the channel and the work that goes into the channel when you subscribe. But as I always say, whether you are a regular viewer or a subscriber, I can never do what I do here without any of you out there. So thank you one and all for your continued support and encouragement of the work that I am doing here. Before getting into this week's reading, I'd like to take a moment and thank those of you who tuned into last week's reading. Last week, I broke my line of 5 streak. If you are no stranger to these videos, you know that my go-to reading of choice is using a line of 5. But I broke that trend because last week I worked with a spread that I created some time ago called the As Above, So Below spread. So it turned out to be quite the hit with a number of you, so much so that some of you even circled back and said that you would be willing to give that spread a try. So I was very excited to hear that. So if you decided that you were going to work with that particular layout, please circle back again at some point and let me know how it went. I would love to hear all about it. So I'm going to be continuing my celebration of tarot because I have dubbed this month Tarot Month for me because it was 20 years ago this month, February of 1999, where I got my first tarot deck. And I actually believe, if my memory serves, it was actually this very week that I actually got that deck. So I talked about it last week. That deck was the Crowley Thoth deck, and I worked with that for a couple of years. And then the next deck that I got was my Universal Way Tarot, which I used last week. I've had that for at least 17, 18 years in my tarot journey, so that has been one of my buddy decks. This week, I'm working with another one of my buddy decks because on the very same day that I got that Universal Way Tarot, I got this deck, and this deck is the Robin Wood Tarot. So the Robin Wood Tarot is by Robin Wood, of course, and it is published by Llewellyn Publications. So now that I've talked about the inspiration for this week's reading, I talked about the deck, let's now get to the table, or at least get to a closer look at the table for this week's video reading because I have a little bit of a surprise. And here we are with the cards on the table. And this week, just like I did last week, I'm going to be working with a spread that I came up with over the course of my tarot journey and experience with the cards. And this particular spread is based on the 5 of Wands in this particular deck. So I'm going to hold the card up closer to the camera so you can see it. But this is the 5 of Wands. And typically, this card can represent, I call this the 2 spirits card. So in one regard, the one spirit it represents is the spirit of competition. And that's based on the image that people probably are more familiar with from the Rider-Waite deck. So I'm going to hold up that 5 of Wands because I have it here as well. So you can see what I'm talking about here. So this is the Rider-Waite image. And as you can see, on that card, there are 5 people, and it looks like they are in a state of conflict. This card is known as conflict and strife, but it's also about competition because it could look like that there is a sporting event or some kind of physical activity that the group of people are involved in. So I also look at this as sporting events, but overall, it's the spirit of competition. So when this card comes up, it could just be saying that whatever the situation that you are involved in, that there may be some element of competition involved in it. But the thing that makes them different is that the depiction on the Robin Wood in my right hand, it still could be competition, but it also looks like the 5 people are forming a star with their wands. So I call this card, not only is it representative of the spirit of competition, but also the spirit of cooperation, because each person is doing his part in establishing a goal. For me, the star symbolically represents a goal. So when we have a goal, there may be several elements. If it's not actually people, then each person could be representing an element that needs to come into play in order to bring about the overall goal, which is the symbol of the star. So based on this imagery, I created a spread which I call the star spread. So it's good for when somebody has a goal that they want to achieve or accomplish, again, keeping with the image of the star. And then each point on the star represents some aspect that may play a part or an element in achieving the goal. So that is the inspiration, if you will, for this week's layout. I call it the star spread. So I'm going to put this card back down. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the card back in the deck, and I'm going to shuffle the cards. And as I shuffle, I'm focusing on my usual intention for these weekly general readings. And I'm asking what information, what insight, and what guidance is going to be most helpful for us as we move through this upcoming week. So I'm shuffling that intention into the cards. I'm feeling one more time, I'll be good. All right. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. And this week, I'm going to go ahead and fan the cards out like I usually do. And this week's reading will consist of 6 cards, so I'm looking in the fan for 6 cards that are getting my attention. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I need 2 more. Card 5 and card 6. Okay, so now I'm going to take the remainder of the deck up. And I'm putting that to one side. And so now I have my 6 cards. So I'm going to count back. I have 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So now I have the cards. And the way the spread gets laid out is that we lay the first card at the top. And for me, I represent this as the mind or an idea that we want to achieve something or accomplish. What's the idea around this? For me, the 5-pointed star can also represent the body of man. So this would be the head, right? Everything starts with an idea. So that would be the first card. Then card number 2, keeping with the star formation, gets placed the bottom right. And I tend to look at this as, if this is the body of man, this would be one of the feet. And this would be the current understanding of the idea as it is, because we're drawing a line from this card to this card, right? Then based on this, card number 3 gets placed to the left. And then if we draw a line from here to here, then this would be a hand. This could be an action step. It's some sort of activity, because hands symbolically represent activity for me. So this would be some activity in connection to the understanding of the idea, right? And then card 4 goes across, like so. And then this would be the other hand. So it could be as a result of the action taken here. What is the result of that prior action? And then is there another action that needs to be taken, going with the idea that the hands symbolically represent activity, right? Is this a way to course correct the idea. Do we need to tweak it? Do we need to modify it? Do we need to improve it? Right? So that's another way of looking at it. Then this is connected to the next spot here, and this is the other foot, right? And so if this is the understanding of the idea before any action was taken, then this would be maybe a more current understanding based on the actions that have been taken, right? This would be like maybe the prior understanding and the new level of understanding about the idea, right? And then the last card goes in the middle of all the cards, and this would represent the end result, the outcome, or maybe the integration of our understanding and the action steps. Now, another way of looking at this spread that you could do is if you are into elements, because this deck has a pagan theme to it, so you could consider the 5 elements. And when I say the 5 elements, I'm thinking fire, earth, air, water, and spirit would be the top one, and then the integration of all the elements, right? How do all the elements combine and integrate in terms of the whole picture or the bigger picture, that kind of thing. So these are the positions, and so now since the cards are laid out, let's just go through them one by one. Starting with card 1, we have, ooh, I love this, all right. So here we have the Magician card. So the first thing I want to say is that the Magician is a Major Arcana card, and for me, Major Arcana cards carry more weight. So when it comes to an idea, I call this like an idea in divine mind because I'm a metaphysician, so everything for me represents the mind in a much larger sense, and everything that we experience in the physical world is the result or the manifestation of an idea. Everything starts with an idea, right? So here we have the origin, so we're maybe putting some effort and energy and some work into an idea, wanting to achieve the goal. Here, if we have a goal, then this card would suggest what is the work that we want to do to achieve the goal. I tend to look at this as a job and employment card, so just playing on that, it could represent the work that we need to put in, the effort that we need to put in to achieving the goal. Now, what I love about this card is that the Magician represents the principle of as above, so below, which is a nice reminder of the spread that I referred to last week. If you remember, the spread I worked with last week was actually called as above, so below. So here we have the spiritual principle, though, as above, so below. So here we have, if this is the idea, the goal in mind, then this is about what actions are going to be in alignment with that, right? As above, so below, right? It could also be a matter of saying that there may be a spiritual principle that we need to put to work in terms of manifestation or manifesting the goal or the idea, because this is also about manifestation, right? It also says, too, I'm looking at the image, what are the tools that we need to put to work? The Magician has all the elements, and I love the fact that we talked about the elements before I turned the first card over. But he has all the elements from the Minor Arcana, which is representative of each suit in the tarot, right? So this says that we have all the tools that we need at our disposal, right? It's just a matter of, are we going to constructively put those tools to work, right? So that is how it will look at the Magician, right? It says we have the tools. The table represents work or activity. It's a matter of putting the tools that we have to work, right? And the other thing I'm looking at, it's a matter of balance, striking a balance, because we have a black candle and a white candle on each side of the Magician, so that represents polar opposites and balance. Right? Now, for somebody in particular, since I talked about this card representing job and employment, there may be a job-related issue. And if that's the case, then this could be about working with your talents, your skills, your abilities. This could be working in the field of communication, because this, for me, is the sign of Mercury. That's the planet that's attached to this. So this could be about communication. So that could be the industry or the field of communication. Right? He has his hand raised, so sometimes this could represent being hands-on or doing something with your hands. I tend to think of dexterity with the hand being raised. Sometimes this card can represent the industries of not just communication, but I tend to think of like advertising, promotions, marketing, things of that nature. And sometimes this also can represent working with information technology, so IT work. But if somebody's doing something with their work, two things come to mind. If you're working with a company or a corporation, then this card could be about you selling yourself or you promoting yourself based on your talents, your skills, and your abilities. Now, you may be thinking about self-employment because the one represents the individual, the self. So if you're working on self-employment, then this is about marketing, promoting your talents, your skills, your abilities, but also considering what makes your type of work unique, because the magician can represent, having some level of expertise or being some kind of specialist, having some specialty or specialization. So if you are putting yourself out there in the job market, what is your area of expertise and what is it that you consider to be your specialty? So I'm seeing all that with the magician. The one last thing I think, regardless of whatever it is that the other cards are going to be talking about, this is about having willpower and determination, right? So it doesn't matter what the goal is this week for each of us. It's about having the willpower and the determination to see that through, see the process through, so that we can achieve our goal, right? So that is the magician. So now let's move to the second card, and here we have. Oh, I love this. Okay, so here we have the Three of Pentacles. Now, the Three of Pentacles is very interesting coming after the magician because he represents the master craftsman or the master artisan. So again, we have something here about someone building some kind of reputation for what it is that they are skilled at doing, what skill that they possess. Right? So there is that nice little interplay between the two cards. For me, this is one card that can represent career. So somebody is taking the steps to build their career. And again, that's based on recognition and reputation. But this is also a self-employment card. So I have that carry over as well. Right? And for the self-employed person, this could just be a matter of gradually progressing or building up your work, your skills or your service if you're a service-based business. I'm seeing that as gradually building that up. So it's like building up your clientele, and what's going to be very helpful is going back to this is how you market yourself. Right? Now, if it's for the person who is maybe working with a company or corporation, then somebody may be actively seeking to get promoted, because I sometimes see this as climbing the ladder of success. So that would be a promotion, right? And what would be helpful here in this regard would be maybe taking a look at your educational background. What did you go to school for? And are you working with those talents, those skills, those abilities, right? For other people, then this card could represent just gradual progress being done or made in relation to what it is that you want to achieve. This card for me in the typical Rider-Waite imagery has three people. It has the artisan who we have here, but it also has two other figures, and they're holding a blueprint. So for me, this represents coming up with a plan, drafting a plan. What's the plan? What's the blueprint? And then these two cards would suggest that there's something you could do to start implementing your plan, putting your plan to work, right? So it would be based on the idea. If we go here that this is the mind and the idea, then your understanding of it is coming up with a plan and then putting feet to the plan, right? Walking out your plan. And it may take some time. If I'm going with the idea of walking, that's a step by step. The feet represent natural progression. So what would be the natural progression you need to take to bring this idea from just being head knowledge to start putting it to work or start applying it? So I'm seeing that. And literally for some people, this may be creative work. And the one thing here that might be along with the marketing and the advertising and the promotion would be getting people to see your work. So I'm seeing that. Now, in another kind of experience, sometimes this card for me can represent construction. And it could represent we're putting some constructive energy into repairing some damage that's been done regarding a situation. I'm seeing this. Somebody may be experiencing something with a relationship in which they have a partner or a spouse, because this card can represent an ideal partner or spouse, but we're having a communication issue, going to this being Mercury and communication. So there's something about communication that we need to work on. So I'm seeing that. So that may resonate with someone. But that is the Three of Pentacles. So this is about putting feet to a plan, having a blueprint, a design, and then putting some action to it. So that's the Three of Pentacles. Now let's take a look, because now we're jumping from this card to this card over here. So this would be maybe an action step. Okay. So here we have the Eight of Swords. Now we have a little bit of a challenge here, because swords for me can represent problems, troubles, difficulties. So there may be some challenge or some difficulty in regards to putting some action to the plan. So we may have a plan, but there may be something that comes up because of the way the figure is tied. It makes me think of like red tape, or, you know, being tied up or caught up. So there may be a matter of, for some people, it may be a matter of being too active and not putting in any time or energy into this particular endeavor, right? It makes me feel like the idea here would be like, since this is in the position of one of our hands, it makes me feel like the expression like my hands are tied. And if you can clearly see, like the person is bound and their hands are tied behind their back. So it could just be saying too, like, I can't devote any time or energy to this because I have the idea in my head that I have too much going on, right? It could also be too, like this card is known as the interference card. So it could just be a matter of what would be interfering in your life that would prohibit you from taking action on the plan, right? It could also symbolically suggest, like, once we have the idea, maybe in one regard, there isn't anything that you can do in the moment, right? Because sometimes with the position of the figure here, it makes me feel like, you know, she can't do anything, right? So it may be a period of inaction. She's inactive, right? Her hands are tied, right? So there may be that. It could also be too, like, you may have an idea of what the plan is. You come up with the plan, and then you may be stuck on what would be the first step, because sometimes for me this card can represent not having an idea about how to progress, how to move forward. But for me, the chief message of this card is that there's something about interference, about being stuck, and not being able to progress or advance, right? For some people, because I'm looking at the number 8 here, some people, I'm being said to say, is that some people don't take any action because they're stuck in the space of wondering whether it's the right idea, it's the right time, is the step that they want to take, if it's the right thing. And so sometimes we create a space of doubt, and as a result of being in that space, we don't take any action at all, right? And so sometimes in this regard, that could suggest like nothing progresses, nothing moves forward, nothing advances, because there's no action being taken, because the person is not sure or not clear on whether or not that the action that they feel they should be taking or think they should be taking is the right one, right? And that would be playing on the idea of the clouds in the background, and as I'm pointing to the clouds, there's light coming out from the clouds. It's like I'm waiting for something, like a light to be shined, or to be sure, meaning like I'm waiting for the clouds to part, right? So I'm seeing that. Or that maybe you're revisiting an idea, wanting to accomplish something, and you've tried it in the past before and it didn't work, right? So you may be thinking in your mind of all the ways that it didn't work before in the past. But for me, that is the Eight of Swords. It's about moving through thoughts of limitation, restriction, what is interfering in your life that would be keeping you from moving forward or taking action on the idea or the goal. And how can you get about the business of clearing up this interference? Because this may be what you need to work on before you can move your plan forward, is that you may need to clear up something in your life that you think is interfering or creating a block around that. So that's how I will look at the Eight of Swords. right? Before I go on, it's making me think that our work this week, to some degree, may be taking a look at the thoughts that kind of hold us captive and hold us hostage, right? This is like a prison of the woman's own making if we go with the idea that swords represent the mind and mental activity, right? But swords also represent lifestyle. So I'm going to say two things. For some people, it's about working through the thoughts that keep you stuck and keep you from moving forward. And then some people, based on their lifestyle, it's just a matter of having a lot going on and maybe needing to clear the deck to some degree, right? And I keep thinking I'm done. The last thing about the eight is a number of power, right? So it could just be a matter of you are restricting your power. Remember, the magician is all about willpower. So how are you limiting and restricting your sense of power? Because that may be affecting your willpower and your determination to move forward. So that is the Eight of Swords. So now we're going to go over here to the other side, the other hand. Okay. So very interesting. We have the Queen of Pentacles, which we had last week, in last week's reading, right? So if we're talking about, if this looks like career, then for some people, if we go with the idea this is about talent, skills, and abilities, the magician, then this card is about skills and qualifications, right? So it's about you working with your natural born, she's out in nature, your natural born skills and qualifications. You know, this card also too, I talked about it here with the Three of Pentacles. This card for me is Capricorn. So Capricorn, when it comes to career, represents our reputation. So we have that energy here being repeated about reputation. And reputation simply is known as what it is you're known for. You know, when it comes to work, when it comes to talent, skills, and abilities, what are you known for? Right? And then again, I'm going to repeat this again from last week. For me, when she comes up, she can also represent health and nutrition. So that could be the field that somebody is wanting to move into. And that could be health and nutrition in the physical, material sense, pentacles, or it could be something more alternative. So this could be somebody who's thinking about being a holistic health practitioner, right? Not necessarily in the traditional Western medicine type sense, but maybe more of a blending between maybe the Western and the Eastern ideas or thoughts about health and nutrition. But I'm thinking about this in terms of overall well-being, right? And for some people, they may need to be working on their finances, creating a greater sense of abundance. She can represent financial independence and financial self-sufficiency. And I'm saying that based on the fruit. There's fruit in the background. So for me, this could represent abundance, right? And if we go that these two cards are connected, it could be that one of the restrictions or the limitations may be based on money. And that would be the 8. The 8 is a number of abundance, but it's also about money. So if there's any kind of money issues here, because I could see this as maybe finances being tied up in other things. So it could be, how can you start small? If money is an issue, how can you start with maybe the resources that you have at your disposal? Remember, going back to the magician, it's about everything being at your disposal. You have all the tools that you need. So what would be the one small thing you could do with the money that you have at the moment to get this thing going, right? And it could be, for some people, it could be a matter of freeing yourself from some sort of financial bondage, right? So you can have more abundance in your life. So I'm seeing that as a possibility. So again, for some people, it could be career related. It could be having to do with your skills and your qualifications. For some people, it could also be about health and nutrition. So that would be somebody who may be moving into the field, but also maybe what you might need to do for your own sense of overall health and wellness this week, right? And maybe how can you free yourself up and maybe be a little more active in terms of creating a health plan or a health routine. And then, of course, then the final thing here would be about finances. And somebody may be wanting to do some work around moving from being tied up or having limitations or restrictions or having your money wrapped up or caught up in other things so you can have a little more financial independence, self-sufficiency, and a little more freedom, right? The difference here is that this woman is tied up and this woman is free, right? So I'm seeing that with the Queen of Pentacles. The last thing I want to say is that she can represent an approach to life. So one of the approaches that she brings is about, this is a week where we can be practical and pragmatic, right? So for me, with the 2 pentacles on this side, it's about keeping it real. So how can we keep it real in a way that doesn't limit and restrict us, but allows us to move forward? But this is about keeping your situation, keep it real. And so now let's take a look, because now we're jumping from this card to this card. This is the other foot. Ooh, okay. So now here we have the star. So the first thing that I want to say, and I like the fact that the star is under this card on this side, because right now out of all the cards, the 8 of Swords is the challenge card. So here we have the star. So the star would say, like, if you are feeling a sense of restriction, limitation, you know, things interfering with whatever it is that you want to achieve, then this card is saying, don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. Because this card represents having faith, having hope, being hopeful, having high hopes for the future, but also having a positive attitude. Because this card represents optimism, right? So this would be about, how can you be optimistic despite whatever the challenge might be that's being presented with this card? Now, I love this card because one of the things here with the star in the middle is that this is all about the ideal or goal. So I love the fact that I'm doing a star spread. I talked about the idea about representing, you know, this idea about elements coming together to achieve a goal. And here we have the very card that represents ideals and goals right here in the spread. Right? So there's that. This card is also about talent, skills, and abilities. It could represent the learning of a talent or a skill, or developing an existing talent or skill. Right? And for some people, just like I talked about here with marketing and advertising and promotion, this card here represents visibility, you know, exposure. So this could just be like, for some people this week, it's a matter of what can you do that would allow you to gain some kind of visibility, to gain some kind of exposure. Right, now for the very spiritually minded person, we have the Magician and the Star. So this is about connecting with cosmic consciousness, the universal life energy. So here we have that idea about as above, so below, because here we have the mind, and then here we have the foot, 1 foot. And the interesting thing here is that she has 1 foot on land and 1 foot in water. So this is about blending the spiritual and the material, or the physical, right? It's having an understanding of both worlds, right? And being able to see elements of the spiritual in your physical experience. And as I'm talking about this, in this regard, it brings me back to what I said here, right? This idea about blending the West and the East, right? So if somebody is thinking about doing the work of a holistic health practitioner, let's say, that is a blending of 2 different worlds, right? And then this card is assigned to me the star sign, or the sun sign, actually in astrology, of Aquarius. And Aquarius is the sign that represents friends and associates and humanity as a whole, right? And it could also be saying too, like, there may be somebody doing some computer work or something with the internet, something of that nature, right? But the chief message, no matter what it is, especially if we're having challenges, blocks, limitations, restrictions, things that we feel are interfering with us moving forward, then the message here, and this is very important, about not losing faith and not losing hope. This is about having faith and trust in yourself and in the universe, right? If this is about talent, skills, and abilities, you're a natural born talent, skills, and abilities. It's about not losing faith and not losing hope in yourself and your abilities. Now, in a totally different topic, because I mentioned it over here, I talked about somebody maybe wanting to do something with a partner or a spouse about repairing some kind of damage. If that resonates with you, then the star on this side represents dealing with issues around trust. She's naked on the card. So for me, that represents being authentic, being who you are, being true to yourself. You know, this idea about what you see is what you get. I have nothing to hide, right? But it also represents being vulnerable. And when we're talking about trust and trust issues, really what it is that we have to be willing to be vulnerable with another person, right? And that is the sign of true trust. Trust is about being vulnerable. So for somebody, they may need to be working on repairing an issue regarding trust in another person. And maybe, as I'm saying that, trust in yourself, because you may be questioning your judgment about the situation from your standpoint, right? And feeling like you can't trust yourself to make a decision based on the experience, right? So the first thing that has to be done in this regard is that you have to work on being able to trust yourself, and that will help you learn or relearn to trust other people, right? But that may take time depending on the severity of the situation, but I'm seeing that. And that's another way that we keep ourselves stuck, right? If we go with the idea, like you say, I can't trust anybody, and then we create a prison of our own making. An interesting thing here to note is that we have an 8 card here, and then if we take the 17 adds to 8. 1 plus 7 is 8. So we have 2 8s over here. So for somebody, it may be a matter of one's personal power, right? And reclaiming that. So that's the message I see with the star. So now this next card, the final card, would be the integration of all of these, right? The end result. And we have, oh, I love this. Okay. So here we have the Page of Cups. So the Page of Cups is a card that can represent something new or beginning on an emotional or spiritual level, because that is what the Suit of Cups represents for me, right? Cups represents feelings, emotions, and relationships. So that very last thing I said about a particular relationship and a relationship challenge, it may be we want to get to a place where we have new feelings about that. We want to have a new emotional experience around that, right? For some people, this could be, I'm looking at the fact that she has an artist palette tied to her waist. So this may be central in terms of creativity. Like creativity is going to be a central part of the process, being creative. And it doesn't matter what the situation is. It's like, how can you be creative with it? Especially if you think that there's something that's keeping you tied up in terms of a limitation, restriction, something that's interfering. Then this card would be about, how can you be creative with that? How can you still work with that and not let it keep you from doing anything? But how can you work with it instead of it keeping you from doing anything or getting anything done? For some people, if there's something about changing work and career overall, this card is about making a good or a great first impression. Right, so I'm seeing that with the Page of Cups again. This could represent a new phase, chapter, experience on an emotional or spiritual level. This could represent focus on being creative. And this is about making a great first impression. Right? And so again, there may be somebody doing something of an artistic nature, because we have the artisan card here, and then we have the Page of Cups. So then the last thing I want to say is that for me, the Page of Cups can represent news or messages. So I'm going to shuffle the cards to see what message does the Page of Cups bring or bear. And I just moved my cloth, picking up the deck, so I'm going to straighten out the cards for just a moment. Okay. That's just me, personal note, it's just me being a perfectionist. Okay, so now I'm going to shuffle the cards, and I'm shuffling the cards with the question, what do we need to know about the message, or what additional message does the Page of Cups bring or bear? So I'm not sure if you can see that, but I'm shuffling the cards as I'm focusing on that intention or question. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. You might be able to see that. I'm cutting it. And now I'm going to fan the cards out. And we'll pick one from the fan. I'm stepping back and looking at the fan to see what card I like. So I like this one here. I'm going to put it next to the Page of Cups. And I'll pick the other cards up. All right. So as I was shuffling the cards, one additional message I want to say, because I talked about health and wellness over here and a holistic health practitioner, somebody may be wanting to think about, in terms of their business, if that resonates with you. Sometimes this card for me can represent healing arts. And one of the healing arts I tend to think of with this card is, because I am a practitioner of it, is Reiki. So somebody may be thinking about adding Reiki or blending Reiki to their current health or holistic health practice. And that would make sense, because for me, Reiki is a hands-on energy modality, and the woman is holding the pentacle in her hands. So for me, it looks like she's giving, almost in a way, she's giving the pentacle Reiki. So that could be Reiki in particular, but any other type of healing modality, because again, I'm talking from my personal reference. And so for me, I'm a Reiki practitioner, but there's other things like quantum touch, if we go with the cosmic aspect of it, or healing touch. But I tend to look at this as universal life energy, and that is one of the things that we talk about as Reiki practitioners, right? So there's that. Another thing that somebody could be doing is that they may be wanting to blend more of the metaphysical sciences into what it is that they are doing in terms of their craft. Sometimes for me, this could represent things like astrology, numerology, palmistry, divination, like tarot, like what I'm doing right now. So that may be another thing that you may want to add to your current practice, or that you are working on sharpening your skills, because here we have skills and building a reputation, becoming a master. So here we have Reiki master possibly, or just a master of whatever it is that you consider to be your metaphysical science or modality, right? And you want to get better at that. If you are already established to some degree, again, then this just may be putting some visibility or gaining some visibility around that work. So that came to me as I was shuffling, and I didn't want to ignore that. So now let's take a look at the message card here. And here we have, oh, you can't make this stuff up. Okay. So here we have another major arcana card, and here we have temperance. And temperance is the very thing that I was just talking about. Here we have repeated symbology. We have the angel who has 1 foot on land and 1 foot in water. Right, so here we have, again, that blending of the spiritual and the material, right? So it could just be a matter of, again, if we're talking about holistic health or alternative health practices, this is about blending the traditional and the alternative, right? So there is that. Another thing that this card for me can represent in light of the context, it represents blending something and harmonizing something. So no matter what it is, it may be two diametrically opposed things, and we are taking those elements and we are blending them, we are combining them, we are creating some kind of mixture or concoction and seeing what we come up with. So there's that. Another thing here could be that this could be the week. If we're feeling like we're stuck and limited and restricted, we don't know how to start, this would be about dipping your toes in the water. The angel having his foot in water could be about dipping your toes in the water, getting your feet wet, right? What you could do is slowly ease yourself into whatever it is that you want to achieve, to see how it feels, to get a feel for it, right? So I'm seeing that. Another thing this card for me can represent is experimentation. So how can you experiment, maybe in a small way, with what it is that you want to accomplish this week? Another thing here with this card is about the art of patience. So remember, I talked about this card over here, the Three of Pentacles, about being gradual progression, right? Things building or things moving along gradually. So this card is about being patient. It's about moderation. You know, it's about balance. Again, going with the two candles here, about balance. So there may be, for some people, it's about creating balance. If you're feeling like you don't have the time to put into whatever it is you want to achieve because you just got so much other stuff going on, then how can you create a sense of balance that would create the space for you to start doing something with that? right? So again, we have getting your feet wet, experimentation, balance, especially with the light of the fact that the angel here is juggling 3 balls. So again, for that person who may feel like I'm juggling so many things, it could be about how can you create balance around that. And then the last thing that I want to say about this card is that if there is somebody who is understanding or resonating with the emotional experience that I talked about, this idea about some damage being done that we're working on rebuilding, it has to do with trust, then this card would be about compromise, right? It's about what do we need to do to create compromise, and that may be the area of balance, especially if that has been, a sore spot, like people being unwilling to compromise, right? So how can we work on creating compromise on both sides, right? Compromise is not just about one person giving in to the other person's hopes, wishes, expectations, but how can each party be willing to put into the situation or, forfeit something that would be helpful to the relationship as a whole. That's compromise, right? And then the last thing with that, this card can also be about creating win-win situations or solutions. Sometimes we go into a situation where it looks like somebody wins and somebody loses, but how can we create a win-win where everybody wins? Right? And for the high-minded spiritual person, this card can represent working with your angels. This is a guardian angel card, so this could be about working with your angels. Somebody actually may be an angel medium or an angel channel and channeling messages. Remember, the magician is all about communication, right? So this may be about somebody who is a channel for spirit and a channel for the angels in particular. And then this card would be about light beings and angelic forces as well. And then this card for me, I just realized this card is also, because of the feathers, this could be also a nod about working with your angels and spirit guides. For me, this is about angels and spirit guides. So for some people, this could be about forming a greater connection with your angels and your spirit guides. And then this card, the Page of Cups, would be about a person who is learning to develop his or her intuition in connection with that, right? Because the cup here that the page is holding has a fish emerging from it, and that's emerging spirituality. So somebody may be a budding psychic, a budding intuitive, a budding angel channel or medium. And it's about learning how to refine your process. So this is your guardian angel. This could also be Archangel Michael, and that would make sense here with the Eight of Swords. For me, Archangel Michael rules the suit of swords. So Archangel Michael is helpful in providing clarity and giving us the next immediate action step. You don't have to see the entire picture going forward. If you're like me, I used to be a guy who wanted to see the whole picture before I took a step. And one of the things I learned about working with my angels is that they only show you the next immediate action step. But Michael, that's one of his chief specialties, going back to the magician and specialties. One of his specialties is about showing us clarity or giving us clarity around our next immediate action step. So if you work with angels, this could be a nod for you to check in with Archangel Michael and asking for assistance in having the next immediate action step being revealed to you. And here's the thing. The following step won't be revealed to you until you have the faith and the trust to take the step that's being provided. So there's that. And then the last thing I want to say about the Temperance card, keeping with the angel theme here, is that this can represent Archangel Cassiel. And Archangel Cassiel is an angel who came to me one day while I was experiencing Reiki. And no mistakes that I talked about Reiki over here with the star. That angel came to me during a Reiki session, and I didn't know who the angel was. And so I asked the angel to give me its name, and it gave me the name Cassiel. And then I came home, and I put Cassiel in Google, and it turns out that Archangel Cassiel is the angel of temperance, but also the angel of tears. So I'm saying all that to say that for the person who may be experiencing an emotional challenge in a relationship, and we're wanting to work on the rebuilding of trust, then Archangel Cassiel may be wanting to assist you in helping you get over the tears, meaning sorrow, that you have had or have been holding on to about the experience up to this point in time. And then the question for you would be, on that note, would you be willing to release the sorrow? Would you be willing to let go of the tears attached to that situation? And so on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this week's Oracle Outlook. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a very tarot-tastic week. Take care.